In an alternate universe, Anakin Skywalker left the Jedi Order after marrying Padmé Amidala. Shortly after their wedding, Anakin and Padmé sat down in their cozy lakeside retreat on Naboo, basking in the serenity of their new life together. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the shimmering waters of the lake, while the soft sounds of nature filled the air. Inside, however, there was a rare moment of tranquility. Anakin took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on Padmé, his heart full.
Padmé, I've never been this happy.
He began, his voice tinged with both relief and wonder.
Ever since I joined the Order, I've always felt like an outcast. Everyone was scared of my potential, always watching me, judging me. But when I'm with you, none of that matters. It's like the weight of the galaxy is lifted from my shoulders.
Padmé listened intently, her hand gently squeezing his. She could see the sincerity and the deep sense of liberation in his eyes.
Anakin, are you sure about this? Leaving the Order is a monumental decision. You've worked so hard to become a Jedi. Maybe you should take some time to think about it.
Anakin shook his head, a rare certainty in his expression.
I've never been more certain of anything in my entire existence. The Jedi Order was a part of my life, but it was never my entire life. I don't want to live in secret anymore. I want to live in peace and happiness with you. I want us to build a future together, out in the open without fear.
Padmé could see the resolve in his eyes, and it both comforted and worried her. She knew how deeply Anakin felt things, how his passions could drive him to the ends of the galaxy. Yet, she also knew that this decision was not made lightly. She leaned in closer, her forehead resting against his.
Then we'll face the future together, whatever it may hold. Just promise me, we'll take it one step at a time.
Anakin smiled, a weight truly lifted from his shoulders. A few days after Anakin and Padmé settled into their new life on Naboo, Anakin arranged to meet Obi-Wan Kenobi at the secluded meadow, where he and Padmé often sought solace. The meadow was a place of peace and natural beauty, far from the bustling city of Theed and hidden away from prying eyes. Anakin stood at the edge of the meadow, his eyes scanning the horizon as he waited. The sun cast a warm, golden light over the swaying grasses and wildflowers. He felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety, knowing the conversation ahead would be difficult. Soon, he saw a familiar figure approaching, his robes billowing gently in the breeze.
Anakin, you sounded urgent in your message. Is everything all right?
Anakin nodded, though his expression was serious.
Yes, Master. Or rather, I hope it will be. There's something important I need to tell you.
What is it? You could tell me anything.
I've decided to leave the Order, Obi-Wan. I've married Padmé, and we're starting a new life together here, on Naboo.
For a moment, there was only silence. Obi-Wan's eyes widened in shock, and he looked as though he was struggling to find the right words.
Anakin, I don't know what to say. You've always been unique, but this is unprecedented.
I know it's a lot to take in, but I've never been more certain of anything. The Order felt like a cage. They were always afraid of my potential, always trying to control it. With Padmé, I feel free. I feel whole.
Obi-Wan's expression softened, and he placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder.
You know I care for you deeply. You've always been like a brother to me. This path you've chosen, it's not what I would have expected, but I understand why you felt you needed to make this choice.
Anakin met Obi-Wan's gaze, relief washing over him at his former master's understanding.
Thank you, Obi-Wan. That means more to me than you know.
I worry about what this will mean for you. The Council won't be pleased, but more than that, I worry about the future.
I understand the risk, but I believe in the path I'm taking. I believe in Padmé, and I believe in myself.
Then I will support you, Anakin, as best as I can. But promise me, if you ever need help, if you ever feel lost, you'll come to me, no matter what.
I promise. Thank you for understanding.
As they parted, Obi-Wan hesitated, then turned back to Anakin, his expression thoughtful.
You know, I almost made the same choice years ago.
What do you mean?
Obi-Wan's eyes softened with a mix of nostalgia and sadness.
Her name was Satine. She was the Duchess of Mandalore. We shared a connection, a deep bond. There was times I considered leaving the Order for her, just as you have for Padme.
You've never told me about this.
It wasn't something I spoke of often. In the end, I chose to stay with the Order. But there were moments when I wondered what might have been. Now that I understand the weight of your decision more than you realize.
Anakin felt a deeper bond with Obi-Wan in that moment, recognizing the shared struggles they had both faced. As Anakin watched Obi-Wan walk away, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Padme by his side and Obi-Wan's understanding, he was ready to face whatever the future held. In the dimly lit chamber of the Jedi Council, the air was thick with tension. The holographic forms of several Jedi Masters flickered to life, joining the present members for an urgent meeting. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in the center, his expression grave as he relayed the news of Anakin Skywalker's departure from the Order.
Anakin has left the Jedi Order. He has married Padmé Amidala and is starting a new life on Naboo.
A murmur of shock and disbelief rippled through the council. Mace Windu leaned forward, his brow furrowed deeply.
This is highly irregular, Obi-Wan. Anakin's potential was always a concern. Without the guidance of the Order, his power could become uncontrollable, even dangerous.
I share your concerns, Master Windu. Anakin's power is immense, and his emotions run deep. But I believe he has found a sense of peace and purpose with Padme. For the first time, he seems truly happy.
Ki-Adi-Mundi's hologram flickered as he spoke.
Happiness is fleeting, Obi-Wan. The dark side preys on such emotions. If Anakin's happiness turns to fear or anger, he could become a threat not only to himself, but to the galaxy.
Obi-Wan looked to Yoda, hoping for some measure of wisdom and calm. The ancient Jedi Master's eyes were closed in deep thought, his ears twitching slightly as he processed the news. Mace Windu's voice cut through the silence, his tone firm.
This is not acceptable. We cannot allow Anakin to roam free, unbound by the principles of the Jedi. We should consider bringing him back.
Obi-Wan's heart sank at the suggestion, but before he could respond, Yoda opened his eyes, raising a clawed hand for silence.
Hasty we must not be. Anakin's path, uncertain it is, but trust in the Force we must.
But Master Yoda, Anakin's emotions have always been volatile. Without our guidance, he could fall to the dark side.
Possible this is, but also possible it is that balance he may find. A choice he has made. Respect his journey we must. Guide him still, from afar we can.
Obi-Wan felt a wave of relief at Yoda's words, grateful for the calming presence of the Grand Master.
I will keep in contact with Anakin, monitoring his progress. He knows he can reach out to me if he ever needs help.
Trust in the Force we must. Anakin's destiny, his own to shape it is. Hope, the light he will follow.
The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but Yoda's words carried the weight of deep wisdom and years of experience. Slowly, they began to nod in agreement, though the concern still lingered in their minds. Mace Windu leaned back, though the worry had not left his face.
We will trust in the Force, but we must remain vigilant. The galaxy's future is uncertain, and Anakin's role in it even more so.
As the meeting adjourned, the weight of responsibility settled heavily on Obi-Wan's shoulders. He knew that Anakin's journey was just beginning, and the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But with the support of the Council and the guidance of the Force, he hoped that Anakin would find the balance he so desperately sought. As the Clone Wars intensified, the galaxy plunged deeper into conflict, battles raged across countless star systems, and the Republic's need for strong leadership grew ever more urgent. Padmé Amidala, now a central figure in the Senate, found herself increasingly consumed by her duties. The war demanded her presence in countless debates, negotiations, and strategic meetings, leaving Anakin behind in their peaceful retreat on Naboo more often than either had anticipated. Anakin's days grew longer and more restless. He spent hours training, meditating, and tinkering with his droids, but a growing sense of unease gnawed at him. Watching the war unfold from afar, he couldn't shake the feeling that he should be doing more to help. Doubts began to creep in. Had leaving the Jedi Order been the right decision? As a Jedi, he could have made a significant impact on the battlefield, saving lives and fighting for the Republic's survival. But then an opportunity arose. Padme was preparing for a crucial diplomatic mission. She was set to meet with a separatist senator, a rare chance for peaceful negotiations that could potentially alter the course of the war. The mission was fraught with danger, and the need for reliable security was paramount. Anakin's eyes lit up at the prospect. This was his chance to get involved, to use his skills and make a difference once more. Padme hesitated when Anakin offered his services as her protector. She understood his restlessness and the fire within him to contribute, but she also worried about the dangers he would face. Yet, she knew how capable he was, and his presence would be a significant reassurance to her.
Are you sure, Anakin?
I need to do this, Padme. I can't just stand by and watch anymore. I can help protect you and support the mission. It's what I should be doing.
As they prepared for the mission, Anakin felt a spark of excitement and determination. This was his chance to prove that he could still make a difference, to show that his decision to leave the Order didn't mean he was abandoning the fight for peace and justice. The sun was beginning to set as Padme and Anakin arrived at the secluded meeting place on the remote, forested planet of Lumaria. The location had been carefully chosen for its supposed neutrality, a rare sanctuary amidst the chaos of the Clone Wars. The dense trees and tranquil atmosphere offered a deceptive sense of peace as they made their way to the clearing where the negotiations would take place. Padme's face was set in determined lines as she approached the Separatist senator, a tall, stern-looking Twi'lek named Senator Vesk. He greeted them with a curt nod, his eyes flickering briefly to Anakin before settling back on Padme.
Senator Amidala, it's good to see you. I hope we can find common ground today.
Senator Vesk, I share your hope. The galaxy has suffered too much already. We must find a way to end this conflict and bring about peace.
As the negotiations began, Anakin stood a few paces behind Padme, his senses alert and his hand never far from his lightsaber. The discussion was tense but civil, with both sides presenting their arguments and counter-arguments. Hours passed, and the weight of the war seemed to hang over every word spoken. Despite their efforts, it became increasingly clear that the gap between them was too wide. The ideals and demands on both sides seemed insurmountable. Padme's frustration grew, but she remained composed, hoping for a breakthrough. Finally, Senator Vesk sighed, a look of genuine regret crossing his face.
Senator Amidala, I truly wished it hadn't come to this. I had hoped for a peaceful resolution.
Anakin's senses prickled with unease at Vesk's words, and he instinctively reached for his lightsaber. Before he could react, the shadows around the clearing seemed to come alive. From the darkness, the imposing figure of Count Dooku emerged, his presence sending a chill through the air.
Indeed, it is unfortunate, but the terms have changed. This planet is no longer neutral. The leaders of Lumaria have agreed to join the Confederacy.
Anakin stepped forward, his lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss, casting a blue glow across the clearing.
Dooku, you won't get away with this.
Ah, young Skywalker, always so eager for a fight. But you are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender now, and perhaps we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed.
Padme's eyes darted around the clearing, noting the emergence of battle droids from the shadows, their blasters trained on them. She reached for Anakin's arm, a plea for caution in her eyes.
Anakin, we need to be careful.
Anakin's grip tightened on his lightsaber, his mind racing. He knew they were in a precarious position, but retreat was not an option.
We'll find a way out of this, Padme. I promise.
Enough talk. Seize them.
The battle droids advanced, and Anakin sprang into action, his lightsaber a blur of blue light as he deflected blaster bolts and struck down the droids. Padme took cover, her blaster in hand, firing precise shots to support Anakin. The clearing erupted into chaos, the once peaceful negotiation site now a battlefield. Anakin's movements were a blend of grace and fury, his skills honed by years of training and combat. But the odds were against them, and the sheer number of droids seemed overwhelming. Dooku watched the struggle with a detached interest, his lightsaber still unlit.
You cannot win, Skywalker. Surrender, and perhaps I will show mercy.
As the battle droids fell one by one to Anakin's lightsaber, he turned to Padme, his face etched with determination.
Padme, get back to the ship and call for help. I'll hold them off.
Anakin turned his focus back to the fight, his lightsaber humming as he deflected blaster bolts and cut down more droids. Count Dooku, standing on the edge of the chaos, finally ignited his crimson lightsaber and strode forward with a confident smirk.
It seems you've learned much since our last encounter, but tell me, have you learned enough?
Anakin's blue blade clashed with Dooku's red one, the sound of their sabers locking echoing through the forest. Dooku's smile widened as he parried Anakin's aggressive blows with ease.
Yes, use your emotions, young Skywalker. Remember how I took your hand. Let that anger give you strength.
Anakin's eyes burned with fury, his strikes growing more powerful and frantic. He could feel the dark side's pull, the raw energy coursing through him, but his training was incomplete. Each surge of power seemed to come with a cost, and he found himself being pushed back despite the increased ferocity of his attacks. Anakin roared in frustration, swinging wildly at Dooku, who deftly sidestepped and countered with a powerful strike that sent Anakin sprawling. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to stand, refusing to give up. Meanwhile, Padme reached the ship and urgently transmitted a distress signal. Padme didn't waste a moment. She rushed back toward the clearing, her heart pounding with fear for Anakin. She arrived just in time to see him battling Dooku with everything he had, but the fight was brutal. Dooku seemed almost amused, his strikes calculated and teaching as much as they were deadly.
You're letting your anger cloud your judgment, Skywalker. You have potential, but you lack control.
Anakin gritted his teeth, his frustration mounting. He could feel the dark side's seductive promise of power, but it was slipping through his fingers. Each time he tapped into his anger, Dooku seemed to counter with ease, as if the Sith Lord was drawing him into a trap. Dooku's blade flicked out, scoring a shallow cut across Anakin's arm. Just then, a familiar voice called out from the edge of the clearing.
Anakin!
Padme stood there, her blaster in hand, eyes wide with determination. Anakin's heart lifted at the sight of her, but he knew he couldn't afford any distractions.
Get back, Padme!
Ah, the Senator. Perhaps she can serve as further motivation for you.
Anakin's anger surged, and he attacked with renewed vigor, but Dooku's experience and control continued to give him the upper hand. It became clear that Dooku was prolonging the fight, almost as if he was training Anakin, pushing him to his limits without delivering a final blow. The forest echoed with the clash of lightsabers and the heavy breathing of the combatants. Anakin was tiring, his incomplete training and raw emotions making him vulnerable. As the duel between Anakin and Count Dooku raged on, the forest clearing crackled with the intensity of their lightsabers clashing. Anakin's anger surged with each strike, his emotions fueling his strength. Dooku's taunts and teachings seeped into his mind, urging him to embrace the dark side, and Anakin found himself drawing on this forbidden power more and more.
Yes, Skywalker, feel the power of your hatred. Let it guide you.
Anakin's attacks grew fiercer, faster. His movements became a blur of blue light and raw energy. Dooku, skilled and experienced though he was, had underestimated the true potential of the Chosen One. The force of Anakin's blows became overwhelming, and Dooku found himself struggling to keep up. With a powerful swing, Anakin finally disarmed Dooku, slicing off both of the Sith Lord's hands. Dooku fell to his knees, a look of shock and pain contorting his features. Anakin stood over him, both his and Dooku's lightsabers ignited, their blades crossing at Dooku's neck.
Anakin, stop! This isn't you!
Anakin's eyes were wild with rage and revenge. He tightened his grip on the lightsabers, poised to deliver the fatal blow.
He deserves this, Padme, for everything he's done.
But before he could act, a familiar voice called out, clear and commanding.
Anakin, stop!
Obi-Wan Kenobi appeared at the edge of the clearing, his presence a calming force. Hearing Obi-Wan's voice, Anakin hesitated, his grip loosening slightly. In that moment of indecision, Dooku seized the opportunity. Summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, he unleashed a powerful wave of the Force. The blast radiated outwards, hitting Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme with a violent force. They were all thrown backward, crashing into the surrounding trees and rocks. Padme's head struck a jagged rock, and she collapsed to the ground unconscious.
Padme!
Anakin shouted, scrambling to her side. He cradled her in his arms, panic and fear gripping him as he checked for signs of life. Obi-Wan, dazed but conscious, pushed himself up, his eyes scanning the area for Dooku. But the Sith Lord was already retreating into the shadows, his escape swift and silent amidst the confusion. As the ship ascended from the now hostile planet of Lumaria, the urgency of the situation pressed heavily on Anakin. Padme lay unconscious in his arms, her breathing shallow but steady. He could feel her life force through the Force, but she remained unresponsive.
Padme, wake up! Please, wake up!
Anakin shouted, his voice filled with desperation, but there was no response. Panic surged within him, quickly morphing into rage. Obi-Wan knelt beside him, his face etched with concern.
Anakin, she's alive. We need to stay calm and get her to medical attention as quickly as possible.
Anakin's eyes blazed with fury as he rounded on Obi-Wan.
This is all your fault. If it weren't for you constantly holding me back, Dooku would be dead and Padme would be fine.
Anakin, I was only trying to help.
I don't need your help!
With Padme cradled in his arms, Anakin stormed to the cockpit, carefully placing her in a seat before preparing the ship for immediate departure. His hands trembled with a mix of fear and anger as he navigated the controls. He glanced back at Obi-Wan, who stood silently, a look of deep regret on his face. As the ship sped away from Lumaria, Anakin's mind raced. The events of the day played over and over in his head. The duel with Dooku, the temptation of the dark side, and now Padme's life hanging in the balance. The anger and frustration boiled within him, but the sight of Padme's still form reminded him of what truly mattered. Reaching Naboo, Anakin made a direct course for the medical facility in Theed. Upon arrival, he carried Padme inside, his heart pounding as medical droids and staff rushed to her aid. He paced anxiously in the waiting area, his thoughts a chaotic swirl of anger, fear, and regret. Days turned into weeks, and Padme remained in a coma, her condition stable but unchanging. Anakin stayed by her side, his worry and frustration growing with each passing day. The vibrant city of Theed seemed a distant world compared to the small room where he kept his vigil. He barely ate or slept, his thoughts consumed by the need to see Padme open her eyes again. One day, as Anakin sat in the quiet room, holding Padme's hand and silently willing her to wake up, a visitor arrived. The door opened, and Chancellor Palpatine entered, his expression somber and sympathetic.
Anakin, I came as soon as I heard. I am deeply sorry for what has happened to Padme.
Anakin looked up, surprised but also grateful for the Chancellor's presence.
Thank you, Chancellor. It's been difficult.
I cannot imagine the pain you must be feeling. Padme is a remarkable woman, and she has always been a beacon of hope and strength. This should never have happened.
It shouldn't have. Dooku is responsible for all of this. He must pay for what he's done.
Yes, Dooku is a menace. He must be brought to justice for his crimes. But tell me, Anakin, how did this come to pass? You are one of the most powerful Jedi.
Former Jedi. I had Dooku at my mercy. I could have killed him, and end this once and for all. But Obi-Wan interfered. He told me to stop, and in that moment of hesitation, Dooku escaped.
Why do you let the Jedi hold you back, Anakin? Even though you are no longer a part of the Order, you still allow them to influence your actions. You have the power to make your own choices, to shape your own destiny.
I don't know, Chancellor. I've always felt like they were holding me back, afraid of what I might become. But I don't want to become like Dooku. I want to protect those I love, to bring peace.
And you can, Anakin. The power to protect and bring peace lies within you. But you must not let others dictate how you use it. You must trust your own instincts, your own strength. The Jedi have their own agenda, but you have the potential to achieve so much more.
Anakin looked back at Padme, her still form a painful reminder of his own perceived failures.
I just want her to be safe. I want to end this war and see her wake up.
And you can, Anakin, but you must not let anyone, even the Jedi, hold you back. Embrace your true potential, and you will find the power to protect those you love and bring an end to this conflict.
As Palpatine prepared to leave, he paused, his eyes locking onto Anakin's with an intensity that sent a shiver down the young man's spine.
Anakin, do you trust me?
Of course.
Palpatine's gaze shifted to Padme, lying motionless on the bed. He placed a hand gently on her forehead and closed his eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the beeping of the medical equipment. But then, outside, the clear blue skies began to darken as ominous clouds rolled in. The vibrant plants and lively animals around the medical facility began to wither and die, their life force being drawn into Palpatine. The air crackled with dark energy, and a powerful surge seemed to flow from Palpatine into Padme. She suddenly gasped for air, her eyes fluttering open for a brief, fleeting moment before slipping back into unconsciousness. Anakin, startled by the display of power and the brief awakening of Padme, jumped to his feet.
What did you just do?
I channeled the life force from the surrounding area into Padme. It's a technique that goes beyond the teachings of the Jedi.
How do you know the Force? Were you a Jedi?
No, Anakin, I am not. The Jedi view the Force in a very narrow, dogmatic way. I, however, see it from a broader perspective. This power you witnessed is just one example of what the Force can truly do.
Then you are a Sith.
Labels, Anakin, are limiting. The dark side, the light side, these are merely aspects of the same power. The Force is much greater than the Jedi or the Sith. Unfortunately, I have grown old and too weak to wield it properly, but someone like you, with your potential, could master it.
Anakin looked back at Padme, the desperation and fear for her well-being clear in his eyes.
You mean I could save her?
Yes, Anakin. With the proper training, you could gain the power to protect those you love, to save her from any harm. But it requires embracing a larger view of the Force, one that the Jedi would never teach you.
A silence settled between them, heavy with the weight of the decision before Anakin. The room seemed to close in, the echoes of Palpatine's words resonating deeply within him. Finally, Anakin spoke, his voice firm.
Teach me. I'll do whatever it takes to save her.
Excellent, my young friend. Together we will unlock the true power of the Force. And with it, you will have the strength to protect those you care about and bring an end to this war.
Under the shadowy guidance of Palpatine, Anakin Skywalker began his secret training in the dark side of the Force. The Chancellor, who revealed himself as Darth Sidious, emphasized the necessity of keeping Anakin's new path hidden.
For now, you must remain in the shadows, Anakin. The Jedi would surely come for you if they knew. We must bide our time until you are ready.
Anakin accepted this, driven by his desire to protect Padme and gain the power he felt was always just out of reach. He continued to visit Padme regularly, her condition stable but unchanged, always under the pretense of a concerned husband. Meanwhile, his training sessions with Palpatine were intense and all-consuming, taking place in the dark, hidden corners of Coruscant where they would not be discovered. Palpatine taught Anakin the ways of the Sith, encouraging him to embrace his anger, fear, and hatred as sources of strength. Anakin learned to channel his emotions into powerful bursts of dark side energy, enhancing his abilities far beyond what he had known as a Jedi. His skills in combat and manipulation of the Force grew rapidly, fueled by the raw intensity of his inner turmoil.
Remember, Anakin, the Jedi teachings are limited. They fear the dark side because they do not understand its true potential. You, however, are destined for greatness beyond their comprehension.
Despite his growing power, Anakin's heart remained conflicted. He was constantly torn between his love for Padme and his resentment toward the Jedi Order. Palpatine skillfully exploited this inner conflict, subtly reinforcing Anakin's mistrust of the Jedi and his belief that they were holding him back. Weeks turned into months, and Anakin became more entrenched in the dark side. His eyes began to take on a yellowish hue, a visible sign of the corruption within. He became more secretive, more isolated. During this period, Palpatine carefully orchestrated events in the war to ensure that Anakin remained loyal to him. He fed Anakin's desire for power and control, promising that together they would bring peace to the galaxy and save Padme from her dire condition. In the shadows, Anakin honed his skills, becoming a formidable force. He learned to use the dark side to heal wounds, to influence the minds of others, and to unleash devastating attacks. His training sessions were grueling, pushing him to the brink both physically and mentally, but always with the promise of greater power. Palpatine's influence over Anakin grew stronger, and the young former Jedi began to see him not just as a mentor, but as the key to his future. The Chancellor's words became gospel, and Anakin's loyalty to him became absolute. As the time passed, Anakin's transformation was nearly complete. The once noble Jedi Knight was now deeply entrenched in the dark side, his former ideals twisted by the power and promises of his new master. The stage was set for the final act, where Anakin Skywalker would emerge from the shadows, not as a Jedi, but as a Sith Lord, ready to execute Palpatine's grand vision for the galaxy. As Anakin's training under Palpatine continued, the dark side's grip on him tightened. One evening, in a secluded chamber deep within the heart of Coruscant, Palpatine turned to Anakin, his voice filled with a mixture of authority and anticipation.
Anakin, the time has come to complete your training. Once this task is accomplished, you will have the strength to save Padme.
Anakin's eyes burned with determination.
What must I do, Master?
You must storm the Jedi Temple and eliminate the Jedi. To succeed, you must draw upon your hate and anger. These emotions will give you the power you need. Once the mission is complete, you will possess the knowledge to save Padme.
What about the Jedi Council? They'll be formidable opponents. I can't take them alone.
You will not be alone, my young apprentice. You will have the command of the clone troopers. As for the Council, I will handle Master Windu and the others myself. Master Yoda is off-world, so you will not need to worry about him.
As night fell over Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine sat in his dimly lit office, his expression grave and calculated. He activated his comm and sent a message to Mace Windu.
Master Windu, I have urgent news. I have discovered the identity of the Sith Lord. Please come to my office immediately.
Mace Windu, always vigilant and ready for action, received the message and quickly assembled a group of Jedi Masters to accompany him. As Windu and the other Jedi Masters made their way to the Chancellor's office, Anakin Skywalker prepared for his own dark mission. Leading the elite 501st Legion of clone troopers, he approached the grand entrance of the Jedi Temple. His mind was focused, his heart hardened by the promises of power and the desperation to save Padme. The temple guards, unaware of the impending doom, stepped forward to halt him.
Halt, Skywalker. What is your business here at this hour?
Anakin's response was swift and merciless. He reached out with the Force, snapping their necks without a moment's hesitation. The guards crumpled to the ground, lifeless. He pushed open the grand doors of the temple, his lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss, casting a menacing blue glow in the dim light. The clones followed him into the sacred halls, their blasters at the ready. The initial targets were the Padawans and younglings, training in the lower levels of the temple. Anakin's heart twisted with guilt, but he buried it deep. focusing on the rage and hatred that fueled his power. The cries of the innocent echoed through the halls, mixing with the sounds of blaster fire and the clash of lightsabers as the clones engaged any Jedi they encountered. As he ascended to the higher levels, Anakin encountered seasoned Jedi Knights and Masters who put up fierce resistance. The halls of the temple became a brutal battlefield. Master Sin Dralig, the Jedi Battlemaster, confronted Anakin in one of the temple's grand chambers.
Skywalker, what have you become?
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
Anakin snarled, attacking with a series of aggressive strikes. Dralig parried and countered, but Anakin's rage gave him the edge. With a final powerful blow, Anakin struck Dralig down, his body crumpling to the floor. Throughout the temple, similar battles raged. Clone troopers overwhelmed Jedi in sheer numbers, their disciplined blaster fire cutting down many defenders. Anakin continued his rampage, fueled by the dark side, his mind set on completing his mission. Meanwhile, in the Chancellor's office, Mace Windu and the other Jedi Masters arrived, their expressions wary and determined. Palpatine rose to greet them, his demeanor that of a concerned leader.
Master Windu, I have uncovered the identity of the Sith Lord.
Who is it?
It is I, Master Jedi.
In an instant, Palpatine ignited his crimson lightsaber and attacked. The room exploded into chaos as Windu and the Jedi Masters fought to subdue the Sith Lord. The battle was intense, with Palpatine's dark power clashing against the combined might of the Jedi. Back at the temple, Anakin reached the council chamber, where a few Jedi Masters had gathered to make a final stand. Among them was Master Shaak Ti. The duel was fierce, but Anakin's relentless assault and the power of the dark side overwhelmed Shaak Ti. With a final devastating strike, he ended her life. The council chamber, once a place of wisdom and peace, now lay in ruins, a testament to Anakin's fall. With the Jedi Temple in flames and the Jedi Order decimated, Anakin's mission was nearly complete. He stood amidst the destruction, his heart heavy but resolute. The dark side had taken its toll, but he believed the power he gained would be enough to save Padmé. As Anakin, now Darth Vader, continued his brutal siege of the Jedi Temple, he suddenly felt a powerful disturbance in the Force. It was as if a great void had opened, sucking in all the darkness and malevolence he had come to rely upon. His breath caught in his throat, and he staggered, momentarily disoriented. It took a moment for him to understand what had happened. His master, Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord, who had promised him the power to save Padmé, was dead, killed by Mace Windu. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. His anger and hatred surged, but beneath it all was a crippling fear. Without Sidious, without the dark power he had been promised, how could he save Padmé? How could he bring the peace and order he believed in? For a moment, the cries and clashes of the battle around him faded into the background. Anakin was paralyzed by the enormity of what had just occurred. The Sith Lord who had orchestrated the entire war, who had manipulated Anakin into betraying everything he once held dear, was gone. The clone troopers around him continued their relentless assault, unaware of the seismic shift that had just occurred. Anakin's eyes burned with tears of rage and frustration. He had sacrificed so much, given up so much, and now it felt like it was all slipping through his fingers. He roared in fury, the sound echoing through the desecrated halls of the temple. Drawing upon every ounce of his remaining strength and anger, he pushed forward, his lightsaber a blur of deadly red light as he cut down any Jedi who stood in his way. Determined to complete his mission, Anakin fought with a savage intensity, each swing of his blade fueled by the loss of his master and the desperate hope that somehow, someway, he could still find the power to save Padmé. He tore through the ranks of Jedi defenders, his resolve as unyielding as Durasteel. In the heart of the temple, he encountered more Jedi Masters. The battle was fierce and unrelenting, but Anakin's anger made him unstoppable. He moved like a storm, a dark force of nature determined to obliterate everything in his path. The Jedi fought valiantly, but one by one, they fell to Vader's relentless assault. He reached the council chamber again, the bodies of fallen Jedi littering his path. His mind was a maelstrom of dark emotions, his thoughts consumed by the image of Padmé lying unconscious, dependent on a power he no longer knew how to access. As the last of the Jedi defenders fell, Anakin stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving with exertion. The temple was in ruins, its defenders defeated. Anakin Skywalker returned to Naboo with his heart in ruins. The weight of his failure bore down on him like a crushing storm. He had betrayed the Jedi Order, killed his friends and mentors, and for what? Sidious was dead, and the power to save Padmé seemed more elusive than ever. The rising empire held no allure for him now. All he cared about was Padmé, who remained in a coma. He spent days by her side, watching her motionless form with a mix of desperation and despair. His mind was a tumult of anger, fear, and regret. The medical droids had done all they could, but her condition remained unchanged. The dark side's promises had failed him, leaving him with nothing but the hollow echo of his own rage. One evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the room, Anakin's turmoil reached a breaking point. He stood, trembling with fury and grief, his hands clenched into fists.
I did this for you. I sacrificed everything for you. Why won't you wake up?
In his anguish, he began to draw on the dark side, feeling the life force of the vibrant world around him. The lush gardens outside, the thriving wildlife, all of it pulsed with energy. Desperation drove him to tap into that power, to drain it and channel it into Padmé. He reached out with the Force, feeling the life around him begin to wither and die, the lush greenery outside turning gray and brittle. The energy flowed into him, dark and potent, but his control wavered. His own body began to tremble with the sheer intensity of it, his mind teetering on the edge of collapse. But then, amid the chaos, a soft, warm touch broke through. A hand, gentle and familiar, was placed on his face, stopping him. He gasped, his eyes snapping open to see Padmé, her eyes fluttering open and filled with concern and love.
Anakin,
she whispered, her voice weak but unmistakable. The dark power that had been consuming him dissipated in an instant. He fell to his knees beside her, tears streaming down his face.
Padmé, you're awake. I thought I'd lost you.
I'm here, Anakin. I'm here.
Anakin's heart swelled with relief and joy, the dark cloud that had enveloped him lifting, if only for a moment.
I tried everything to save you. I did terrible things, Padmé. I don't know how to make it right.
Anakin, I felt the darkness in you, but I also felt your love. We can find a way to move forward. You must let go of your anger and fear.
As she drifted back into sleep, still weak from her ordeal, Anakin sat by her side, holding her hand. The road ahead was uncertain, and the shadow of the Empire loomed large. But for now, Padmé was alive, and that gave him the hope and strength to face whatever came next. He vowed to protect her, to seek redemption, and to find a way to harness the power within him for good. In the aftermath of Sidious's death, the galaxy found itself in a state of chaotic flux. Without the unifying force of the Sith Lord's dark influence, the Republic was left fractured and leaderless. The power vacuum led to widespread unrest, with various factions vying for control and stability. The few surviving Jedi, including Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, went into hiding, but continued their efforts to reform the Jedi Order in secret. They focused on preserving their teachings and helping the scattered remnants of the Republic resist the growing chaos. The Jedi worked tirelessly to support those striving to restore order and justice in the galaxy. Padmé Amidala, drawing on her experience and influence, emerged as a key figure in the efforts to rebuild the Republic. She tirelessly advocated for peace and democracy, rallying support from systems disillusioned with the broken state of the galaxy. Her leadership and compassion inspired many, but the truth about Anakin's actions during the siege of the Jedi Temple could not remain hidden forever. As the galaxy learned of Anakin's betrayal and the atrocities he committed, public opinion turned against them both. Once celebrated as heroes, they were now seen as pariahs. The very people they sought to protect began to turn on them, blaming Anakin for the turmoil and Padme for standing by his side. Facing increasing hostility and fearing for their safety, Padme and Anakin made a difficult decision. To protect their unborn child and find a semblance of peace, they chose to disappear into the unknown regions of the galaxy. Leaving behind the broken republic and the tumultuous political landscape, they embarked on a journey to the farthest reaches, seeking a place where they could live in anonymity. In their absence, the reformed Jedi continued their covert efforts to stabilize the galaxy. They nurtured the seeds of resistance against the chaos, quietly supporting those who fought for justice and the restoration of democratic principles. They took solace in the hope that, despite their exile, Anakin and Padme's legacy would endure through their child, who might one day help restore balance to the Force. As the years passed, rumors and legends spread of a powerful warrior and a wise leader living in seclusion, far from the turmoil of the known galaxy. These stories served as a beacon of hope for those who believed in the possibility of redemption and the power of love. In the quiet and mysterious expanses of the unknown regions, Anakin and Padme found a measure of peace. They raised their child, teaching them the values of compassion, justice, and balance. Anakin, forever marked by his past, sought atonement, hoping to leave behind a legacy of hope and redemption. Though they had vanished from the public eye, their influence persisted, inspiring those who knew their tale to strive for a better future. The broken republic slowly began to heal, guided by the enduring principles of the Jedi and the unyielding hope that, even in the darkest of times, the light of the Force could prevail.